Hello and welcome to Talking Shit About, a monthly podcast where I, Elizabeth Weberman, interview someone about something they love, something they hate, something they've been through, or something they just know a lot about, and hopefully by the end we've all learned something. So, disclaimer that I did not give to Colleen before interviewing because I didn't want it to affect the interview is birthing freaks me out, pregnancy freaks me out. It's why I'm team no kids personally. But I was really excited to interview Cassie, who had a baby about a year ago, and Colleen, who is a doula. So I think it's a great interview. I'm so excited for you to listen. Before we jump in, I just want to remind you that I have a merch shop, and proceeds from NIMBY Bingo and Abolish ICE designs go to food banks in Tillamook County. The rest goes to me because I could use it. We have a lot of cool designs, a lot of cool stuff from stickers to t-shirts to tote bags to baby onesies. So I hope you will check it out. I also have a Patreon where for $2 a month you can get behind the scenes or early access to content. It's kind of on my own schedule because I started working full time again and I'm starting school, so it's a little sporadic. So that's why it's just $2 a month. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcasting platforms, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I do have a TikTok. I haven't been using it very much, but it is there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk some shit.
I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I have friends that are firefighters and I know that they use soap.
And she was screaming at me over soup.
Fuck this, I am not ever talking to a Scientologist again. These people are all insane.
I'm putting my bricks in the dumpsters, motherfuckers. Do you see me, bitches? I'm throwing my bricks. And he's just like chucking bricks.
Welcome, everybody. I'm here today with Cassie and Colleen, and we're going to be talking about doulas. What is a doula? What's the process like? I'm super excited to learn more. Colleen here is a doula in Richmond, Virginia, and she was Cassie's doula because if you listen to the latest high school episode, you know Cassie just had a baby. And so I'm excited to learn all about that process. So we're going to start out with Colleen. First of all, welcome to the show. I would love to hear, what is a doula? And then also how you chose this path, how it came to be.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. A doula is a non-medical support person. So thinking about the delivery room, right, we have like providers, like maybe a nurse midwife or an obstetrician, and then obviously a nurse. And maybe in some situations we have like NICU staff or other sort of support staff, but somebody who is there but not employed by the hospital might be a doula. So we are independently contracted out. I worked for 5 years by myself, and then the past 2 years I've been with a doula collective here in Richmond called My Birth. I found out about doula work after graduating with my BSW in social work, so that's my undergraduate degree in social work. And I had a really hard time being a part of being like the man. So like my earliest memories as a social worker was like carrying out evictions and really dark, depressing things like that, or not being able to give people shelter if they needed it in cases of domestic violence and things like that. So I was like, this is not for me. I need to find out something else. And I had heard about doulas while I was in school, and I was sort of like, that's kind of weird and gross. Like, who would want to see that? Like that doesn't sound fun to me. But I watched the movie The Business of Being Born, which is by Ricki Lake, who's like the original, what's her name? The original Hairspray girl from the John Waters Hairspray. And she went on to make several movies, but it was all about her experience of having an out-of-hospital birth. So she gave birth to her baby at home, and it sort of goes over the medical-industrial complex, common interventions used, common issues in birth, and things like that. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is like something I could really do that's in my own way without people telling me how I could do it. So I trained up in Philadelphia and returned back home, started doing some volunteering for some years before transitioning into being a doula full-time after my first son was born. So that is my path. Doulas, like I said, provide non-medical support. So things like advocacy, education. I think the advocacy and education are the two things that I really connect with the most. And then some folks like to focus more on emotional, physical support, things like that. So I'm probably not like a super hands-on doula. I prefer more for partners to do that just because they know them more and they're in love with them. And so we want to build that oxytocin in the room. And so I like educating people to do it for themselves.
So you mentioned earlier that you kind of had like an ew gross reaction at first. Do you know, like, what was your experience with like, or knowledge of like birthing before that? Like, did you watch like gross videos in middle school and that's kind of what like...
So it's actually kind of funny. I was working at this place called the Float Zone, which is like float therapy. Like you're in like an isolation pod and you float on salt water. And we had like lots of gross things happen there. Like people would like leave bodily fluids in the tank, or like somebody pooped in the trash can once and left it for us to clean up. But we had a pregnant person leave and she had lost her mucus plug in the shower. And I was sort of like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? Because there's like a bloody glob of mucus. And so I was like, I don't like this. I don't know what that is. I don't like this. And then my coworker, his wife was actually a doula, and he was like, oh, well, I'll just ask my wife. She's a doula. And I was sort of like, why would you want to do that? But now 7 years later, I'm sort of like, well, duh, that's super cool and really exciting. She probably went and had a baby after that. That's awesome.
Wow, what a place, space, and time to lose your mucus plug, which, listeners,
Truly.
it's exactly what it sounds like. It's not the most that definitely would elicit an ew gross. If you don't know what it is.
If you don't know what it is and you're also like a stranger and it's not yours.
Yeah.
Because, as a doula now, I welcome photos of mucus plugs. People are like, did I just lose my mucus plug? And I'm like, hell yeah, you did. This is awesome. And I have photos of both times that I lost mine with my kids and everything. It's really cool now. But yeah, it's probably a vulnerable experience to lose it in a public location like that and have somebody else find it.
Yeah. So Cassie, what was your motive? Like, did you because I knew you always wanted to be a mom, that's the thing. But did you always kind of determine this path, or was this kind of like more of a recent thing?
I always was leaning towards wanting to do a low intervention birth. At the time, I was thinking of it as like a all natural, which I think that terminology can be a little, I don't know, low intervention, meaning like minimal interventions.
Like medical interventions?
Yeah. As far as like Pitocin, epidural, other pain management that is, I guess, like pharmaceutical, things like that. Because my mom had a really positive birth experience with me, and she didn't have any of those things. She did have an episiotomy, which maybe we'll get to that later on. But as far as like what that entails and something that I wanted to avoid. But yeah, I guess because of hearing like how much she loved it and it was just such a positive experience for her, I knew that was what I wanted. And I actually considered becoming a doula several years ago. In like 2019, 2020, I was at a job that I wasn't really loving very much and was thinking about like, I was just always really fascinated by pregnancy and birth. And I knew a lot of that was because I was looking so forward to mine someday, but it really ran deeper. I was like, I want to get into the nitty gritty and like, like learn more about it. So I started listening to birth podcasts, actually. Like Birth Stories was one of my, like, anyone's birth story anywhere is like my favorite thing to listen to. I just really love it. And the more I heard from the, not necessarily just home birth side, but, folks that are more drawn to home birth and like out of hospital birth, usually higher likelihood there's a doula involved. And so hearing about those and also hearing on podcasts like from doulas themselves, I was like, hell yeah, that's such a, for me, very empowering like way to approach birth, to really fully educate yourself. And if that's the route you wanted to take. And, doulas aren't just for a low intervention birth. I mean, I would want a doula. I knew I wanted a doula with me regardless of how my pregnancy went, how my birth went, if I ended up going like a C-section route or an epidural or, whatever, having an advocate there. So it wasn't just me and my partner in this, once, twice, a few times in your life experience of like extremely intense emotions, sensations, and, like the medical world can be very intimidating and overwhelming, especially the world of pregnancy and birth. And so I wanted to have that advocacy and education, like Colleen said, and that kind of support, not only just for me, but for my partner as well. And yeah, because I can't imagine going through this process and not having someone literally and figuratively in your corner, just to kind of pop in whenever and provide support. And yeah, so whenever I was looking for doulas, I looked at several and interviewed with several, and Colleen, there was just something about her that just clicked. And a thing that I was thinking about was like, who of everyone I've talked to, who can I envision myself, um, you know, primal groaning, moaning in front of, being naked in front of, if I poop during labor, like just thinking about like those things, which is, maybe we should put a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode, like we're going to be talking about some bodily functions, but truly that was like what I was envisioning of like who do I feel like I'll be the most comfortable with and will be able to like crack a joke and get me laughing or snap me out of a headspace, when I'm totally exhausted and at my wit's end. And that was her. So yeah, but yeah, always to roundabout way to answer your question, yes. I always knew that I wanted to go this route.
That's perfect. So I was totally going to ask you how you came across Colleen. So
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Cat in my face on my notes. I think this question's more for Colleen, but what do you think are, well, I guess either of you, what are some of the benefits of having a doula during the process?
Oh geez, so many things. I hear a lot from my like normie friends who aren't in the birth space or who do not utilize doulas, that they're sort of like, well, I don't want to have a birth plan because when you have a plan, then things like always go wrong, which may be the case if you're trying to plan too much. So like, things like I definitely want to have my baby in the water, or I definitely want to have this specific thing happen, or I definitely don't want to have Pitocin after my baby is born, things like that, where we just sort of can't plan for very specific things. But having birth plans, and I've already forgotten your question now, so I'll just keep talking and then I'll re-ask your question in a second. Having birth plans and stuff like that are important for education. And so they're not necessarily because we want to have this like, mystical experience where we witness another realm. Maybe it is just because like we want to feel supported and educated no matter what happens to us. Okay, now what did you ask me? Because I already forgot.
The benefits of having a doula through the process.
That's right. Okay, so I think that's one of the benefits. Certainly just like knowing what's going on. And so the analogy that I give all of the time to people is like, usually when we are in a hospital, we are there because like we broke our leg or someone is passing away or something pretty negative. And so it can elicit a lot of emotions to come into that space if you are typically associating it with negative experiences. And so this is kind of the first time for a lot of people that they're doing maybe like a major thing going on with their body. A major medical situation, or just like a life-changing experience like having your baby be born. It's like a really big deal. And so it's pretty easy for things to be misinterpreted or have desires not be put across. And so I've had people think that bad things are happening when they're not, or I've had bad things happen to people and they're not informed. And so it can really go either way. So just having sort of a third person in the room who's not there to keep you alive, is not there to keep your baby alive, but is there to literally hold you physically, emotionally, whatever, and then explain the steps throughout the process can really transform a potentially traumatic experience to a beautiful or calm experience, or at least, you know, a little bit less of a traumatic experience. So that's for a hospital. I think you had on here. No, that wasn't the question.
That's okay. It leads me into kind of another one. Cassie, did you have birth in a hospital or at home?
Yes.
Hospital.
Yep. Yeah, I chose to do a hospital birth. I really felt strongly for a while that I thought that I wanted to do a home birth. And really, like, the way that my birth went, it basically went the way that it would have gone at home. Like, but thankfully, I also want to like quickly caveat, this is something that I'm really passionate about. So like, I'm gonna, like, my own opinion about it is obviously going to like creep in a little bit, but my own experience, I don't want that to invalidate anyone else's that may be listening, or, you know, folks that are what they want their birth to look like could be totally different than what I wanted mine to look like and what, you know, ended up happening. I also was very fortunate that my birth went the way that it did, because quite frankly, like, that was the birth that my daughter was cool with for a lot of different reasons, you know, health wise and positioning and all of that. So I, you know, just want to quick like disclaimer slash caveat of, you know, birth looks so different for so many people, and I worked very hard to prepare for the experience that I wanted. I know there's a lot of folks out there that do the same thing, and it's, you know, things like a curveball is thrown or things take a turn, and, you know, their birth winds up looking different than what they initially thought. And all that's totally valid and very important. So just wanted to put that out there before I talk more about mine throughout the episode. But yeah, I gave birth in a hospital. Shout out VCU. They were awesome. And I specifically chose a hospital with a midwife team because I knew that I wanted a low intervention birth. And VCU was highly recommended, and like their midwife team specifically. So that's what made me attracted to that option versus like a birth center or something else. Also, insurance wise, birth is expensive. No matter where you do it, you know, even at home, you would have to hire an in-home midwife, you know, things like that. And I just don't know how the world of insurance works with all that in our capitalist hellscape. So hospital made sense for me in that regard as well. And it also was what my partner was the most comfortable with also, just like going through it the first time. Like Colleen said, there's a lot of like, holy shit, like it's very intense. You've never experienced a lot of it before. So we just wanted to have that sort of like safety net in case something did go not according to plan. We had, I guess, a backup in place, you know? But yeah, hospital birth. Hospital birth, but mimicking very heavily like what a home birth would have been.
Colleen, feel free to comment on this, but I think for this episode, you know, whatever path you choose is totally fine as long as it's like relatively clean and safe for the birther and the baby. I've heard probably not rivers.
Oh. I was like, what are they getting at? Yeah, no. I heard a crazy story from so both of my children were born out of hospital, and my second one was born at my house. And that midwife she said, I just wanted to make sure that you have running water wherever you're going to birth your baby. And I said, excuse me? He'll be born in my home. And she's like, okay, well, one time I showed up to a home birth, and she said, they called her on the phone. They said, oh, we're not actually at her house. We're at the river. And so she pulled up, and it was the middle of January. It was snowing, and these people were giving birth to their baby in the back of a pickup truck.
Oh my God.
And she was like, I couldn't just leave, but also now I have to make sure that people aren't going to do something stupid like that.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing an article recently that was like somebody got super sick or something. I'm going to stop talking because obviously I didn't read the article.
I think, yeah. And like, I think that people are sort of like, oh, like people give birth to babies in like their bathtubs and stuff. But honestly, like, I think that your house is probably a lot cleaner than a hospital, given that I have scooped out quite a many like pubic hair from public bathtubs and stuff. Like I always go have to edit so much shit out. I always go in with like the purple bleach wipes if somebody's going to use the tub at any of the hospitals in our area, and I always find some sort of scum or something. So your own house is
wow.
probably the best place to have.
Yeah.
That is
Wasn't
good to
there
know.
real quick before we move on from that? I'm forgetting like wasn't there someone that did like the dolphin midwife thing or like there was a
Yeah, I
woman
don't know.
pregnant and I don't know. Like I said, I deep dove into a lot of like birth podcasts and but there
Mm-hmm.
was like a woman that was like, I want a water birth and dolphins are so intuitive with, like us and they knew that
Probably.
I was pregnant and so she like labor I don't know if she delivered in the ocean or what, but just yeah, be I'm all for like woo-woo stuff, but like woo-woo plus science. Like be smart,
100%.
be careful.
Yeah.
So, Colleen, what are some of your favorite parts of being a doula?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Well, the obvious is definitely when people's babies are there. I absolutely love a moment where a lot of times people are too overwhelmed for this, but I always really love encouraging either mom or their partners who reach down and touch their baby while they're still like making their way into the world. And so if that's just sort of like stroking their hair or being like, whoa, like crap, sort of thing, as well as partners or parents like catching their baby, I think is really special. I don't know, like there's absolutely nothing wrong too with just being like, this is crazy, just get them out of me, please. That's very, very valid as well, because I get that. But I mean, like I remember giving birth to my first son and reaching down and being like, oh my God, I feel his head. And my midwife was like, no, that's your bag of water. That's not a head. And I was like, I don't know what a head feels like. And then eventually I felt his head and we're in the water. And so I felt his hair sort of like moving in the water breeze and everything. And I was like, this is so cool. And so whenever I get to see people do that sort of thing, I think it's incredible. And then I also really love, maybe this one is like a bit more like I told you so sort of things, but I like telling people about things in their in-home visits about their postpartum and how that's going to look like. And people just sort of like are like, okay. And you can tell they're just not really getting it. But then there comes a time when I come back for their in-home visit postpartum where they're like, "Oh, you were not fucking around. It's like you were serious."
Me.
Yeah, like I talk a lot about like, how hard it is to like, I don't know, I'm still arguing with my partner today. Like we both want to go to the gym and we can't just both go to the gym because there's children that have to be watched. And so just the simple things of like not being able to be your own person and drop whatever and go and leave the house at a moment's notice. And people are sort of like, well, yeah, it's a baby. Of course, my life's going to be different. But then it takes it actually happening to them before they're like, oh, my life is much different now. This is much different. I'm having a hard time. I think that's just, I don't know, just seeing the transformation that people go under, I think is incredible.
Cassie, you raised your hand there for a second. Was there something that came to mind?
So following birth, well, before, during, after birth, your hormones are going wild. And I, like right after giving birth, like your adrenaline and endorphins, like everything is just exploding. And I literally slept for maybe 2 hours over the course of 2 days, but felt like not, I mean, looking back at photos, I looked like I was half dead. But in the moment, I felt so invigorated and alive and just so excited. Like in the hospital, I remember that's when babies are like newborns are just like the sleepiest, like the first couple of days. And she would be asleep and I would just be laying there staring at her, like willing her to wake up. Not actually waking her up, but like, I can't wait for her to wake up so I can just like still take all this in. And then came home, still like flying high, and Colleen texted me a couple days after. I was like, hey, just a heads up. I don't know if it's happened yet or not, but usually whenever your milk comes in, because for the first few days, you're producing colostrum, which is, different I don't know all the details of it, but essentially like obviously different material, but different hormones, different like bodily functions involved in like making that versus making breast milk. And so when your breast milk comes in, that usually coincides with a pretty significant hormone drop. And so she just was like, just letting it's totally normal to be feeling sad and scared and all these things, because that's also kind of around the time where like again, those hormones drop, so you're not flying high anymore. You come crashing down and you feel the exhaustion and you feel like the physical sensations in your body really like are amped up for the first time and you're able to pay attention to them and take them in more. And that hadn't happened to me yet. So I texted her back and was like, you know what? I got a little sad yesterday, but I'm totally fine. And then like within 24 hours, I was like, oh my God. Definitely, I'm sure like looking back through the text would be so fun to do. Of just like, oh, there's a tone shift happening for sure. Because I'm not someone that had lived with like depression or anything like that before. And that essentially, I mean, to my knowledge and understanding, that really is what it felt like of you're just not in control of your emotions at all, and you don't know when the next wave is going to hit you, whether it's a good one or a really hard one. And Colleen was really supportive in that sense. But yeah, I was just like, not me. I everything went great and I'm gonna avoid this and like, oh, I just got a little sad, but then it was just like, oh no, this is horrible. I think I remember I texted you, Colleen, I would rather do every minute of unmedicated labor and delivery again versus like in a heartbeat versus go through another minute of this. Like the immediate postpartum emotional roller coaster is just so scary and it's so hard. But thankfully, mine lasted the, I guess, quote unquote, normal, like typical amount of time. It's just, hits you here and there every few days for the first like couple weeks, right? And then it sort of like starts to level out. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. So that's, yeah, definitely an I told you so moment, which she would never ever say. She's like so supportive and always was just a text away and showed up immediately, in my phone to support me. And yeah, but can definitely relate to that as
You're
well.
actually the second person that said that I've gotten to them like a little bit before it hits. Like, this couple was like, "Oh, that's so nice that she's checking on us," but like, not us. Like, we're not one of those people that it affects. And they were like, "Oh my God!" Like both of them, like crying, not doing well. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I guess the first thing that you loved, you did cue me to do that, like reaching down and touching her head.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and I remember in the moment, birth delivery, it's just so crazy, like the headspace that you get into, and that could be like a whole other podcast in and of itself. I don't want to like talk it to death, but you're so immensely present in your body, and you're also like not at all. Like your brain is doing you a lot of favors as far as like, again, with the hormones at play and all of that, of being extremely fully embodied and present, but also sort of removed, like in the sense of like I had no concept of time. Like there were lots of other things that I just wasn't aware of to my benefit, I think. But so there's like like I remember reaching down and there's a tiny little part of my brain that was like, that's going to be so weird. Like, what, are you sure you want to? But, the rest of me just totally overrode that and reached down and touched her. And it was like so wild and so incredible. And definitely very reassuring of like, because I was pushing for a very long time. And so it was just like, okay, well, she's actually here. Like this is it. And I also, in feeling that between contractions, knew like the next round, like I was in a rest phase for like a minute and a half or something, and I knew like the next contraction I feel like that's gonna be it. She's gonna be here, and it was just a really really sweet like limbo space to be in. So
Yeah, that same sort of thing exists for people who give birth via cesarean too. And there's sometimes as a doula that you kind of have to push people. And so like, this work is very much emphasis on like consent and making sure like, even before, is it okay if I touch you, sort of things. But then there are times like times where you think that people would really benefit from being pushed. And so like my son didn't learn how to go down a slide until one day I just like kicked his ass down the slide and now he loves it. And so sometimes it's things like that for people too. And so I'll say, do you want to reach down and touch your baby? And they'll say, no, ugh. And then I'll touch them on the wrist and say, is it okay if I guide your hand to your baby? And they're like, actually, yeah. And so like having somebody actually move their hand. Or like I was saying, and skin to skin after a cesarean. I've had people be so overwhelmed, borderline panic attack, that they're just like, I'm afraid that I'm shaking too much. I'm afraid that I'll drop my baby, things like that. And I even had somebody who was, not the person undergoing surgery, it was the dad in this case, that said, I'm just like so scared to hold my baby that I'm going to drop her. And I said, well, here's your baby. And I just reached their baby out, and then he grabbed her, and he knew exactly what to do because, he was her dad. So sometimes it just kind of takes like a little bit of like a push and I know people are really happy on the other side of it. Being careful with that, obviously, because consent is important too.
Yeah, walking that line between like I just feel like birth is such a for me at least, it was an incredibly spiritual, like very transformative experience. And even if folks aren't spiritual that go through it, I think that they can relate. It's just like the most however it goes, you just feel hopefully, like the most powerful you've ever felt in your life. And it's just you like doing things that you never thought that you would be able to do, because you literally couldn't fathom it because it's unfathomable until you go through it. So walking that line between it's just so intuitive and like it like allowing your instinct to be there, like you're talking about, like with giving the baby to the partner, like your logical mind can kind of trip you up because it is like, it's you've never experienced it before. It's very overwhelming. So it's just like, and there's the fear that you're not going to be able to show up or you're going to do something wrong or get it wrong or like fail in some way. But silencing all of that, or not even silencing it, but just being like, okay, I see and I hear you, do it anyway. Like you can do this. That's really important.
Yeah. I think it comes with like so much of building rapport of like that aspect of pushing people, because there is that play between like your monkey brain of being like, whew, like I know what I'm doing, like, and then like there's your actual like active brain of that's somewhat like gripped in reality. And so it can be as simple as like, hey, in the next contraction, I'm going to go ahead and put your foot up on the stool so we can try and like do some lunges. And they'll say, no, that's going to hurt. And I'll say, okay, that's fine. Because they know at the end of the day that like, even if I push you to do something, you are still the decision maker in this room. Like you are still in charge. And so anything that I offer to you at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I say. If something is, deep down in there and then you don't want to do it, then fair enough. I've had people look in my eyes and almost beg me for an epidural. And I said, you do not have to beg me. You say the word and we will do it. I will call the right people in here and we'll make it happen. So there's no sort of like motives or anything like that people need to feel like they are very much safe and they can trust whatever people around them to do is going to do the right thing for them.
I'm hearing a lot of like similarities between doulas and like peer support work of just like being that advocate and, the consent and autonomy, and that's super cool.
Yeah. I'm a much better doula now that I've had kids too.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
They're 3.5 and 1.5.
Yeah. And you utilized a doula for your births, right?
I did, yes. My first birth, I utilized a paid doula that I didn't know. She was new to me. And then my second birth, I had 2 like peers doula me.
Cassie, earlier you mentioned, I do not remember the word because I've never heard it before, but something that your mom went through when she was giving birth to you that you definitely didn't want.
Yeah.
Are you down to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So that would be an episiotomy, and this actually segues a little bit into I forget if it was like in the outline, but like from my own knowledge and while Colleen is here, just how much birth has changed over the last like even just few decades, especially in like the world of like hospital birth and things like that, and what different expectations are and like norms and things like that. But yeah, an episiotomy essentially, trigger warning for listeners if you squeamish, whatever, maybe skip ahead a few seconds. But it's an incision that the obstetrician makes. Essentially, it's it's always in the one direction, right, Colleen? Between your
It's vagina to anus.
yeah.
Cut.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch that video in middle school in health class where the lady's rips? I was more so Cassie,
Oh,
but
no, I don't think so. Or I vaguely remember once, but it was like it wasn't on the agenda. It was just like we have a sub, I don't know what else to do, watch this. And I actually do remember being like,
Bitch, the fuck?
oh God,
yeah.
I don't remember like seeing it up close or anything. But I guess the
Anyways.
thought with episiotomies is like if you can't, major air quotes, if you can't like get your baby out, if you're pushing and trying and like it's just not working, which happened to my mom and me, and she was just exhausted. The doctor was like, if I do this, then she'll come right out with like your next push, because obviously like you're creating more space. And I believe, if I remember correctly from my like birth class and stuff, at the time it was also thought that like a clean cut would like be stitched up and like heal better, but now with more evidence, we actually know that that's not the case, and just however your baby's positioned, and if you need to tear, just like let your body do it. And it's not the most fun thing to talk about, I know. But anyways, but that was an example though of like that was just the norm back in good old 93, but now we know it's like so much more, and that's like not, it's very rare, right? Like I think that the percentage has gone down quite a bit.
Yeah. I think it was pretty normal, and it was so normal, in fact, that I was reading over my mom's medical records because she brought them because she thought that I would think that they were interesting, because they definitely were. And my brothers were born in the early 80s, and then I was born in the early 90s, and so even like the shift there. So both of my brothers, she got episiotomies, and she did not know. They didn't tell her, but it was in her. But it was in her chart. Yeah. And now I think they're exclusively. So I've never seen one, thank goodness. They're exclusively reserved these days for like unresolved shoulder dystocia. So meaning like your baby has their shoulder stuck on your pelvic bone and they cannot get your baby out. So it is a medical emergency. And they'll try some things prior to that, but then that would be sort of a last ditch effort to try to get your baby out. And there's of course other ways. So let's say you're pushing and your baby's just sort of like held up at a certain point, but it's not a medical emergency like a shoulder dystocia. Then there's options like forceps or vacuum as well, which I have seen.
And the vacuums literally just sucks it out.
Yeah, so it's a little suction cup on their head. And there's a gauge, and so if you exert too much pulling pressure on the gauge on like their head, then it'll go, and they only get 3 shots to get your baby out, and then they have to talk about other methods of getting your baby out.
I was just gonna say, like, there's sort of like protocols in place to make sure it's not like overdone and that it's safe.
Correct. Yes. And your baby has to be low enough that this could easily guide them out and not super high up. And so like, again, trigger warning, not to get too intensely dark, but
that is the worst thing I think I've ever heard in my life.
It's really bad.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways.
So on that note, Colleen, what were some of your concerns when you were getting ready to have birth? Or during the process, I guess.
Of my own births?
Yeah. If you're comfortable talking
of course, absolutely. Well, I had been a doula for a few years by that point, and so it was enough time to have seen some bad things happen. So people rushing into surgery, or babies needing quite a bit of support after being born, and things like that. And so I think there was a lot of doubting myself because I had never done it before. I didn't know if I was, quote, tough enough, which is not a thing. I didn't know if my body would physically do it. I didn't know how I'd react if something went bad. And then, of course, I was worried about being, not in a hospital and then having to need hospital care. And so all of those things were going around in my head. And I remember asking my doula at the time and just being like, am I an idiot for doing this with my first birth? And she was like, I don't think you're stupid. And I was like, okay, I trust you. But approaching my first birth, I had really bad blood pressure. And so there was a lot of talk of, quote, risking me out. So meaning like I wouldn't be able to birth out of hospital and I'd have to have a medical induction at 38 weeks and give birth that way. And so that was incredibly hard because there's a lot of back and forth of like, well, your blood pressure is good today, but last time it was really high. And so if it's bad next time that you come, we're going to have to transfer your care to the hospital. And then a lot of kind of that behavior. And it took one really good midwife just sort of like looking at me and seeing what was going on. And she just distracted me by asking about my tattoos and the music that I liked while she was taking my blood pressure. And it was totally fine. She said, I think you have a case of white coat syndrome and we're making it worse by thrashing you around and sort of like scaring you that we're going to risk you out. And I was fine ever since. So I narrowly avoided a medical induction and gave birth at 41 weeks and 2 days at the birth center as planned. And things didn't go perfect. My son needed quite a bit of support after he was born. He needed a lot of deep suction and some air. But the really great thing about giving birth with like trained professionals is they can handle it. And so really when you're birthing out of hospital, the main thing that you don't have is like blood. So if you were to have like a massive amount of blood loss and you needed a transfusion or obviously an operating room, but things like having medications to control hemorrhages. I had a hemorrhage and they were able to control it with medication. Babies having difficulty transitioning into breathing air. My baby had difficulty breathing air and they helped him. And so having all of those things in place and the right people that knew the right protocols was super important. There was discussion of even risking him out and sending him to the NICU at the Children's Hospital. And they said, just, you know, if he doesn't get better in the next hour or so, we'll talk about moving him out. And I said, okay. And so all of these things that could have been really scary of like, this wasn't on my birth plan to need all this medication to stop my bleeding. This wasn't on my birth plan to not be able to hold my baby because he's getting air. All of these things was made not scary because I had like my trained professionals around me. So in my case, it was a doula and my midwives. And they were just like, we're not scared. We see this all the time. This is really normal. And knowing that, I knew that I was in safe hands.
What did you look for in a doula or midwives? What were kind of either like the experience or personality or just like what did you look for in your doula?
Me?
Colleen.
Colleen and then
Okay.
Cassie.
I already did.
Oh yeah, you already
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Okay. Get out of here, Cassie.
Yeah.
I think when I was looking for my first, I was more concerned about my husband actually, because I was kind of like a little cocky and I was like, well, I know how to do this actually, because like I've seen it done before, which was obviously not the case. And so I remember approaching a little bit later in pregnancy than I probably should have, maybe like 24 weeks or so. My husband was like, so are we gonna like hire a doula, please? Because I don't want to just like be alone. And I was like, oh yeah, we can do it. And we hired her in the way that I make all decisions is I meet with one person and I say, yeah, that's good. And we move forward. It's the same way that I bought a house. It's the same way that I do everything in my life. Yeah, she was fresh out of doula training. She had 3 kids of her own, all born out of hospital. And I think that was what really drew me to her because I was having a similar experience or wanting to. And it did end up being good in the fact that like, when my son was having issues breathing, she had lived experience of her own where she said, yeah, my son needed this too. And he was okay. And I said, okay, that's really helpful to know because you can have all of these experiences as a doula and say, I see this all the time. It doesn't matter. But when it's not your kid that you're talking about, then it's completely different. I think that's sort of the biggest thing is that like when things happen to you in your life, you're not like a trained professional. You're just like a scared parent like anybody else. And for my midwives, for those ones, I don't know, it's not very good or interesting. I didn't really have like a big divisive process. My boss at my corporate job had given birth at the birth center and I said, okay, I'll go there too. And then for my second birth, the people that I'm closest with at my birth, I had not planned on trying to conceive. I got pregnant accidentally my second time around. And I was sort of tired and not feeling well. And I was like, I bet I'm pregnant. And I took a test and I sent it to my 2 colleagues at work. And I said, so do you think that these are like expired tests? Like I should go get new ones, right? Because there's 2 lines of like, I can't be pregnant. And they're like, well, I don't know. You could try taking another test. And I did. And I definitely was pregnant. And so I had those 2 in my corner the entire time. I had a little bit of issues with my second son's anatomy scan. And so when we got into the anatomy scan room, the doctor, who was not our provider, not our midwife, but the doctor that was doing the ultrasound, said, yeah, there's a very good chance that your son has autism, or no, sorry, not autism. Your son has Down syndrome. And we said, what the fuck? What? Because we had gotten genetic testing done. And we, we're not expecting that at all. And they said, yep, it's a very good likelihood that he has Down syndrome and he has these issues that are incompatible with life, and then just sort of walked out. And that was not what we were expecting, obviously. And we were ushered into the genetic counselor's office where I was like snotting, sobbing everywhere. And then they said, do you want to come back on another date? And then they pushed us out the back exit so people didn't see me crying. And it was like horrible. And then I called up my doulas on the phone and talked to them all about it. And then right after, I went to the midwife's office because I had a scheduled appointment. And I walked in and she goes, you're not a crier. What's happening? So I told her everything. And she said, it's not really within my scope to say this, but the amount of times that I've seen babies be diagnosed with these things and that have it be nothing is actually a lot. This could just be like a passing developmental thing. If I were you, I would not worry about it. Your doctor was kind of an asshole. And sure enough, 2 weeks I went back later and everything had resolved and he is chromosomally normal. So they just scared us for no reason, which is something that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes really smart people are not really good at communicating things.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Colleen, could you define what an anatomy scan is?
Yes. So a lot of times I hear my friends refer to it as like your gender scan, which is not what it is. And so when you're around 20 weeks pregnant, especially if you were seeing like a midwife or a provider, they typically don't perform them. You'll go to maybe a maternal fetal medicine office and they will do a really in-depth ultrasound because your baby is finally big enough that they can see all of their organs developing properly, their heart, their brain, things like that. And so a lot of times when we haven't gotten our genetic testing done, or sometimes it's not a genetic issue, it's just some sort of another issue, we will find issues during this appointment. And as I came to learn, a lot of these issues are kind of just while they're growing and they resolve on their own. So a lot of times we'll learn things about baby's heart there, their lungs or their brain, or maybe even their size. So 20 weeks is when we get that main big ultrasound that we call the anatomy scan. And then later on, they may have you do a follow-up for growth or things like that. But pretty much everybody gets their 20-week anatomy scan because it's looking for growth development and then also the placement of your placenta and making sure that it's looking healthy and good.
So I've kind of got a broad question for you guys. We'll start with Cassie. Yeah, again, this is kind of broad, but to anyone who has recently discovered that they're pregnant, do you have any sort of guiding words of wisdom to them? I know we said, everything's self-determined and whatever path they choose is good, but I'd still love to hear any words of wisdom you have for folks.
Yeah. I guess first thing I can think of is just keep in mind the whole time that you, assuming this is your first time, I guess I'm speaking specifically to people who are finding out they're pregnant for the first time. You have not met yourself yet when you're pregnant. You haven't met yourself when you're laboring, when you're delivering. You haven't met yourself as a parent. So it's very valid to be scared and overwhelmed and there's like infinite what ifs, but just now is the time to really be open and have a lot of faith in yourself. And I think that I never really was close to the end of my pregnancy. I became a little nervous of like, oh boy, this is going to be hard in the next like couple weeks or however long it's going to take. The closer I got to actually giving birth, it did get a little intimidating, but I just always had this thought in the back of my mind of like, I know I'm going to be able to do it. I don't know how. And for a lot of people, not knowing how can be like make things even more scary, but I found it liberating of like, I don't know how, but I know I'm going to. And, I wrote down a lot of affirmations, and, a couple of them were like, if other people can do this, then of course I can do it too. All around the world right now, as I am, coming to the end of my pregnancy, as I'm approaching my birth, as I'm giving birth, all of that. Like so many other people around the world are doing the exact same thing with you. And you know, I think that our society really normalizes and sensationalizes fear, whether like comedically in a sitcom of, someone giving birth or in a drama or something like that. A lot of times, the only place that we've seen birth depicted is on TV or in a movie or something like that. And that is really not what it's like most of the time. And it's valid to be intimidated, but just remember that everything that you're about to go through, it's not happening to you, it is you. It's your own power, whatever pain you're feeling. Even, I would extend that to like the annoying pregnancy symptoms of like, like the swelling, you're peeing every, however many minutes and you're exhausted and uncomfortable. Like even all of that is still like you are doing like what no, like not no one else can do, but like only you can build this like specific life and this being and like usher it into the world. And you're supposed to do it, if this is what you've chosen and this is aligned with you, then like you are the one that is going to do it, and you're going to do an amazing job. And just kind of keeping that in mind the whole time, as you like go through all these unknowns and all of the like, instead of being scared of, or in addition to, it's valid to be scared of the pain and the actual process, just remembering that it's coming from within you and your body. And it's okay to not understand that. You can just be it and embody it.
Very well said, Cassie. Thank you.
Thank you.
So goddamn eloquent. Oy.
Oh, thanks. I just did it recently, so. Also, it's like my first one and it went the way that I wanted it to. So like check back in in the future maybe. But anyway.
Colleen, did you have any
Oh gosh.
I know it's hard
I
to top that.
That's so good. That's so good. I think working through fear is one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself throughout pregnancy. Because all of the lessons that you learn while you're pregnant or even trying to conceive really transfer over into when you're a parent. And I don't know, there's just been so many times where fear guides people's decisions. So they would prefer to not know about certain things, or they would prefer to take the path of avoidance. And then they in turn feel a bit disconnected to their pregnancies. And this is coming from someone like, I hated being pregnant both times, and that's very fine. I did not like it. I didn't like the symptoms. I 10 out of 10 would not give birth again, everything like that. But I think leading in the path of like, I don't really know what's happening to me. I don't know, what questions to ask. I don't know what to look for in a good provider. All of those things I think are really important. And so avoiding them does have a negative effect in the long run, because it's so important to feel like we are connected with ourselves. Just like Cassie said, of like, this is not happening to you. This is you. And so as much as you may think that other people are in charge here, whether the other people be your baby or your partner or your provider, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's really you leading this path forward. Alongside with your baby, they're making some choices too. But in that, like, I've had so many people be so afraid of certain types of birth. They're so afraid of, like, let's say cesareans. I had somebody recently who was just like, well, that's not going to happen to me, and I don't want to think about it, and I don't want to even consider a world where that happens to me. And then her baby was born via cesarean, and she said, well, actually, this was the easiest part of my whole experience, and I wish that had I known, then it would have been okay this whole time. I spent this whole time being in terror of what might happen to me, and in reality, all this other shit kind of really sucked, and this was the really awesome transformative experience. And so, like, I think we did a lot of talking today about, like, how beautiful out-of-hospital birth is, or unmedicated birth and things like that. But birth is really, really beautiful, no matter what, as long as it is to the person who is giving birth. But then again, like, taking all of that knowledge into parenthood, because, you know, we spend so much time focusing on like that one day where your baby is born, and in reality you have like 18, 20 years of time where you're just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you're constantly making mistakes. So stopping living out of fear that you're going to make mistakes, and realizing that, like, you are going to make bad choices and bad mistakes, and things are just going to happen, and you are still the best and only parent you can be for your kids, is important.
Very well said, guys. Colleen, would you like me to include information on people if they want to get a hold of you to use your services, or would you rather be a little bit more anonymous?
We can just put my Instagram. It's at Goldenrod Birth and Placenta.
Yeah, she does placenta encapsulation as well.
I do.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, I'll get that from you in an email so I can make sure to put that in the notes so people can look you up. Did you guys have any, I think that was a pretty good way to end it, but just in case, I wanted to give you guys the floor if there was anything that came to mind that we didn't talk about.
I just wanted to sort of echo a little bit of what Colleen was saying, in the sense of, like, obviously I had, like, have my own, like, opinions, preferences, whatever, when it comes to birth, but it really, like, and because my experience was such a positive one, I am just so passionate about it, and I love, hearing, when friends tell me that they're pregnant, or I learn, even, like, I recently heard from a like college acquaintance that she's pregnant, and I reached out to her, and it's like this instant sort of connection of, like, I'm always here if you want to talk about this, like, whether they take me up on it or not. But it really, like, it just breaks my heart whenever I hear folks say, like, birth plan, my plan is to just show up and, like, have the baby, like, a lot of people feel that way. And I understand, again, with, like, what I already said, I don't want to go back into it, but just, like, the way that pregnancy and birth is depicted, and, like, what we're being, like, fed about it, and what, like, how we've internalized it and been, like, socialized to act around it in our culture. I just, whether it's, like, a low intervention, or whether it's a C-section, or, I want people to educate themselves fully on it, and like, all the options that they have, and make an informed decision that's going to be the best for them and the vision that they have, however that looks. So just kind of echoing that encouragement of doing the research and educating yourself through sources that, not necessarily just, like, scrolling through Reddit or Instagram Reels or whatever else, not discount, like, they have a time and place for sure, but, like, really just doing yourself the honor and the service that you deserve of just learning. I know it's scary, and avoidance is definitely something that a lot of us can fall back on when something scary is, like, in front of you and very overwhelming, but it's just, I think, so important to really, like, become empowered in that way. So yeah, I know Colleen kind of already said that, but I just wanted to echo that. But yeah,
I think that's great.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I could talk, like, I love this stuff. I could talk about it for forever. Although I will say, now that I've gone through my own experience and seen everything that Colleen did for me and experienced it, I don't, like, doulas are superheroes. I don't know if I, like, thinking back to me being like, maybe I'll be a doula someday. Jury's still out. Maybe I'll come back around to it. But, like, you guys, all the work that you do, just, like, physically, emotionally,
that could be a whole other thing of all of the downsides, all of the hard shit
Yeah.
The hard shit that comes with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard work, but it's so important and so valuable. And I wish more people knew about it. So, I've a lot of people that I've talked to also, even like for my own birth plan, when people would ask, because everyone feels the need and space to ask you when you're pregnant what you're going to do. A lot of people don't know what a doula is. And if I say, or when I said I was, going to be utilizing a doula, they misconstrued it with like midwife or something. Like they just don't, and they thought that it automatically meant like a home birth, and just they can be utilized. I think everyone should have one, in my opinion. So thank you, Elizabeth, for having us on and providing a platform for this really important, cool work that not many people might know about.
Thank you guys for coming on. I know Cassie knows this. Colleen, I don't know if you knew this, but pregnancy freaks me out. It makes me super uncomfortable. I never want to be pregnant. So I was expecting
you
to be a lot.
I would.
No, because I didn't want it.
So hard.
I didn't want it to like affect the interview, and I was honestly expecting to be a lot more uncomfortable, but actually wasn't. Instead, I'm seeing how it has been turned from this beautiful moment of when you're the most connected to another person in your body to just a medical procedure, and learning more about doulas. So I'm super grateful to have you guys on and have this conversation.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
That is a wrap for May's episode of Talking Shit About. We'll be back in June with another interview, which I'm so excited to share with you. And once again, I have a merch shop, I have a Patreon, I have an Instagram, Facebook, and a kind of TikTok. Sorry, I'm watching Link go nuts on the couch. I'm recording this downstairs with the dogs today. TikTok, which I don't use very much. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in a month.